Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our Monday edition of the TraderMerlin Show. Should be a fun one today. We've got quite a bit to talk about. Markets are kind of boring, but in the crypto world, we have a lot to talk about. Yeah, I know. I look all disheveled. It's been one of those just from home kind of days, just digesting lots and lots of information. So, happy Monday, everybody. I'm trying to bring on guests for you, and particularly guests that you guys like the most. Scott McCormick will be on the program on Wednesday to talk about the Beck Report, which will be bonds, equities, currencies, and commodities. So I'm excited about that because I'm always learning something. I actually just released I meant to do it last week for bar chart. My latest article for bar chart, which I think many of you guys know the talk track, or at least what I would say, but I'm going to copy in the chat anyway because I think the views help me, I guess, and make it look better. So there's my latest article from barchart.com called The 5 Keys to Being a Successful Trader or Investor. So check that one out. Share with anybody who might be struggling or new. And of course, if they're struggling, send them over here so they can maybe learn something and help themselves out. I'm hoping to have my video for bar chart done today if I have time, although the Warriors game is on tonight, so I'll probably do it tomorrow, which kind of ties into what we're going to talk about today. Yes, I will run through the markets overall. However, I had multiple questions come in, one today, one yesterday, on Bitcoin. So I thought I'd do a little bit of a discussion on Bitcoin today. I know I have some people here who love Bitcoin. I've got other people here who hate it and think it's the devil. Let's find some medium ground here. But ask questions along the way. If you're not even sure what Bitcoin is, let me know. Type it in the chat. Just when you type questions, put in a couple question marks before your comment, like Tom did there, just so I know that it's directed at me. Generally, when I see the question marks, that means it's coming towards me, and I'll answer those. So anyway, Scott says, can you talk about Bitcoin today? What are inscriptions? I had another question, which was, is a head and shoulders forming on Bitcoin? And then I thought that would lead me to a discussion called Bitcoin's Big Problem. So as many of you know, I am definitely very bullish on Bitcoin long term. In the video that I'm making for barchart.com on Bitcoin, it's called The Future of Bitcoin, and really outlining what are the driving forces for it over the next few years. And, I guess you can extrapolate that into decades, but I'm really focusing on the next 3 years. With that, I have a very bullish forecast, which I won't tell you what that number is yet. Watch the video and find out in that one. But there's a lot of key things that are driving it. There's also some things that are holding it back. Now, the question that came in from Scott said, can you talk about Bitcoin today? What are inscriptions? So one of the things I loved about Bitcoin is it's kind of falling behind in the popularity race because it's just a transfer of wealth. It's just simply I'm sending money from myself to Joachim in Kansas, or Les in Cape Canaveral, or Katut in New York, if you're still in New York, Katut. That's all it is. It's saying, screw the banking system. I don't trust them. I'm going to keep all my money in a digital world where I can now send that to whomever I want. No bank will go under. No bank's going to freeze my assets. That was the beauty of Bitcoin. It wasn't all these decentralized exchanges and NFTs and tokens and coins and all that crap. Save that for Ethereum. Save that for Solana and Cardano. Let's have all those networks take care of that garbage. And not garbage, but meme coins are garbage. And let's focus our attention for Bitcoin just on being a peer-to-peer payment network. That's one of the reasons I love it. It's no muss, no fuss, it's just payments. Well, recently, there have been these things called inscriptions, which allow you to essentially create an NFT on a Satoshi or on Bitcoin. So what it's caused is a frenzy of all these brain-dead idiots who are buying pictures of a mutated toad or some static picture that they think is worth thousands and thousands of dollars. It's idiocracy, in my opinion, but it is a growing pain of the community. So what's the big problem? In my mind, it's these inscriptions and ordinals, because you're now making Bitcoin, which was a payment network where I can send you money back and forth and that's it, to now, hey, let's have a picture of a stupid frog, or let's create a token on Bitcoin now. It's like, oh no, here we go. So what has happened? Essentially, these inscriptions have created so much transactional volume on Bitcoin that right now there's over 400,000 transactions waiting to be processed. A complete bottleneck of Bitcoin. Now, a couple years back, we would look at Ethereum and say, oh, this is Ethereum's problem, right? Latency, too slow, too much garbage in the pipeline, and all these people trading NFTs. The network is useless. Well, we can start to have that same argument here with Bitcoin at present moment. Don't worry, there's always opportunity in this as well. It may seem like I'm going doom and gloom, but there is opportunity here. So one of the things I want to show you is what's called a mempool. So I'm going to go over here to the mempool. And mempool is basically a place where it keeps all the transactions, where they're kind of waiting, right? So what happens here is, you can see right now there's 466,000 unconfirmed transactions. So when you go through a Bitcoin block, typically a block is roughly 10 minutes. Right now it's about 10.5 minutes, but it fluctuates, but usually it's around 10 minutes. That mempool is where those transactions wait to be processed. And, there was a period back in 2017 where the mempool got very high and then it dropped back down. Right now, it is very overloaded. I mean, it's just completely backlogged with regards to all the transactions coming through for Bitcoin. So bottleneck city over there in Bitcoin, creating absolute havoc. Now, let me ask you guys, well, let me finish my thought on ordinals. I'm hoping, I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist. I'm one who believes in crypto, but I believe that there should be compartmentalized projects that target different projects. For example, I don't think NFTs should be on Bitcoin. Let's reserve that at its purest for what it is, digital gold, digital money. I don't want to have all these other crazy features because it just, I don't know, it starts to take away the uniqueness and the focus of the community shifts. It's now going to be on NFTs as opposed to let's making sure that this transaction grow or this network grows and stays secure. So I think that this ordinals, which are the company that's making these inscriptions, is part of the huge problem right now. I'm hoping, although it probably won't happen, that a lot of people realize how stupid these inscriptions are and they'll leave it alone and go away. What's happened is the transaction fees have skyrocketed. So what used to cost just a few cents to make a transaction, I noticed about 2 weeks ago, the transaction fees were about $5 to send some Bitcoin. Now it's, $20, $30, $40 to send Bitcoin because of the network congestion. So this is a big problem. It kind of would remove the possibility of Bitcoin kind of being the base layer transactions where we would be making. Now a lot of people looking at layer twos like Lightning Network to do faster, cheaper transactions because Bitcoin is completely bogged down. Let me ask you guys this though. If you are in the Bitcoin space, what's one way that you can capitalize on the situation that's going on right now with Bitcoin? Right? Bitcoin is completely bogged down. You've got thousands of transactions that have simply not gone through yet because the block size is 1 megabyte and every ordinal, every inscription now takes up some of that space. And because they've become shockingly popular over the past month or so, now all of a sudden most of the transactions that are happening in there are inscriptions and also meme coins. Is this like reading the tape? No, it's a good question, Margaret. Reading the tape would be, I see all the transactions coming through and all the transactions are being processed, so I'm seeing everything. What we're doing with this Bitcoin right now is we can look at all the transactions coming through, but more importantly, I'm looking at the hundreds of thousands that are just waiting there in limbo going, dude, fill me. I want to get filled, right? Where I sent my Bitcoin to Margaret. It's been an hour. It's been 2 hours, right? Because you can only fit so many transactions in a Bitcoin block. 1 megabyte is the size of each block of data, which will only hold a certain amount of transactions. That block happens every 10 minutes. So if you don't get in that block, you go to the mempool, which is this pool over here, which has, again, 464,000 unconfirmed transactions waiting, and you wait, and you wait, and you wait until finally you get put in there. So it's completely bottlenecked the system. However, there is a clear winner here. There is an entity who is, pardon my English, absolutely kicking freaking butt right now and making money hand over the fist. Who is it? Who in this equation do you think would be making money hand over fist, like exponentially higher, and maybe a great buying opportunity over the next few months going into the next quarter's earnings? I'll leave that one hanging because I do think that there could be some real upside potential for some of these companies. Now, let's go back to the situation at hand, the problem with Bitcoin. It's so bogged down right now that I have 400,000 unfilled transactions, unconfirmed transactions. Imagine this. This is the way the system works. If I'm a Bitcoin miner and I have 10 transactions come in, okay, that's more. I have more than enough space in the block to handle those 10 transactions. So I take all those transactions in, they pay a low fee. But let's, just as an example, let's say I can only take 100 transactions per block as a miner. That's all I can do. But now all of a sudden, let's say I have 10,000 people trying to make a transaction on Bitcoin's network right now. But remember, I'm the miner. I can only, in this example, I can only handle 100 transactions. But I've got 10,000 that want a transaction, which means that 9,900 people are not going to make it in. So what ultimately happens is, out of that 10,000 people that are trying to make a transaction, there's others out there that are going to go, you know what? I will pay a higher transaction fee in order to get my transaction processed faster. And as the miner, all I'm going to do is I'm going to look at all those 10,000 transactions that came in, and I'm going to sort those by whoever's paying me the most. So you've got to know here that the miners are making serious money. So let me show you something here, kind of interesting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what a typical block reward looks like for a miner. I took this from April. So here we go back to, this is what a block looks like from April 8th, right? 4/8/2023. And you can see that the Bitcoin reward, which remains constant, that's normal, stays always the same, is 6.25 Bitcoin. It will stay at 6.25 Bitcoin until April of next year, and then this gets cut in half to 3.125. So that's normal. Every block that the miners solve, they get that 6.25 Bitcoin. But look down here right below it. It says the fee reward. So on this particular block, the miner earned 0.12% in fees. So let me real quickly bring up a calculator for you. And let's just say Bitcoin is trading at $30,000, just to be easy. Times that by 0.1205. So not only did they make the 6.125 Bitcoin, which would be roughly $180,000, but they also made $3,615 in transaction fees. Not bad, right? So it's not just the block reward that the miners get, they get transaction fees. But remember, in my previous statement, I just said, if you have more people trying to fit in the block than is possible, then those people generally start to pay more to get in. And here's the analogy. You want to go to, I guess I should use the Fish concert example. I want to go see Fish, right? I want to go to the show. It's a great venue. Very few tickets. Call it Red Rocks in Colorado, right? One of the best venues in the world to see music. And I've seen Fish there a few times. But let's say I don't get tickets, but I want in. I want to see that show. Think of the show as the block of data for Bitcoin. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to pay more than the ticket's worth. Let's say the ticket's only got $100 face value. I'll be out in the parking lot going, I'll pay $500 for this ticket. Somebody let me in. It's the same basic principle. Someone's going to pay more money to get into that block. So what do you think? Alok said it's 0.12 Bitcoin, 0.12 BTC with reward. So what do you think is happening right now? Do you think that these Bitcoin reward fees are going up or higher, or up or down? You would think they'd be soaring. Check this out. Let's just go look at a blockchain explorer here for all you guys. Yeah, there you go. Taylor Swift concert. You get people just paying way too much money for that concert. Besides, we're watching someone lip sync a show. Come on. Okay, so here is the most recent transactions that came through. This one's is Brian's Pool. You guys see it off the left-hand side? It's block 788834. So I click on this, and look what's happening here. This is going to be like shocking to a lot of people here. Notice the block reward. Let me make it bigger for you guys. Notice the block reward right here is still 6.25 Bitcoin, but look at the fees now. Right? So if I add in, let's say it's $30,000 Bitcoin, and I times that by 5.3539, they're making another $160,000 in transaction fees. They've nearly doubled their reward. Just putting that out there, because remember the previous one was 0.12% or 0.12 Bitcoin. Now it's the last block was 5.35 Bitcoin. So normally this miner would have made 6.25 Bitcoin, so 6.25 times that by 30,000, they would have made about $187,000 on that transaction or on that block of data as the miner. But they're actually getting an extra $160,000 on top of this because of the fees that are outrageous right now. And it's probably going to stay high for some time. So, long-winded answer. What's Bitcoin's problem? Bitcoin's problem is now going to be squarely on, it's taken forever to make my transaction go through. The network is totally bogged down. If I want to use it, I have to pay a much higher fee. That's bad. On the other side of it, if you want to capitalize on this, you might look at shorting Bitcoin because Bitcoin most likely will drop for a bit because of this. Ethereum did as well. But also look at the opportunity for miners. So when I look out at somebody like a Riot blockchain or a Marathon, right? We talked about these quite a bit. I wrote an article for Bar Chart called, is this the Phoenix Rising? Right now, especially over the past couple of weeks, these fees have been substantially higher. So every block that Riot blockchain solves, they're like making 2x. They're making double what they would normally make. And this may stay that way for some time. So I'm kind of anticipating that these Bitcoin mining companies, again, Riot, here's Mara, and there's several others, but these are the big daddies. I'm thinking that there might be some great opportunity for them as a long-term hold. I think next earnings announcement that it's down 11% today, which is crazy. But at some point, when those numbers come through the bottom line, and they've been mining these elevated rewards for, let's say, the last 3-4 months, they could have a serious windfall on their balance sheets. All right, let's see. I'm getting FOMO by not having a miner. Yeah, Alan, I'm kind of there with you. It's like, damn it. It looked for a while like mining companies were dead and gone, but now you have a compounding effect. Number one, you have Bitcoin rallying in price, which is bringing life back to miners. And number two, now all of a sudden the reward is almost double. And I'll show you again on the transaction page here. Let's go back to this one. Let's scroll out here just a little bit. You guys can see right here on this column, it says reward. So 11.9, 11.6. This is normally like 6 point something Bitcoin. It's really not that much, but almost every one of these is over 10. So you're getting way more money out there for Bitcoin right now. So just something to keep an eye on. There's another piece that I think is important and is worth talking about is a Bitcoin maxi will say that this is terrible. I personally think that this is very bad for Bitcoin. I'd rather it just be binary. I want it to be you're a transaction medium. That's it, right? I don't want NFTs. I don't want meme coins. That stupid Pepe coin there's now a Pepe coin on the Bitcoin blockchain because of BEP20, which now allows people to make coins on top of Bitcoin. It's making the problem worse. However, it has now created a situation where the Bitcoin network is getting more usage than it ever has. One could argue that this may actually be a bigger step towards adoption. That because people are now using Bitcoin more, because of the NFTs and some of the other functionality that's now being brought to that Bitcoin ecosystem, that Bitcoin may really start to surge because of adoption, which, I do see a valid point to that. There's an argument to be made for Bitcoin in the long haul. The more adoption it gets, the higher price is going to go because of the number of Bitcoin that are out there. Anyway, that's what I have for you for today on the Bitcoin one. John asks, why do you see a head and shoulders forming? And that is an interesting picture. Let's go back to your Bitcoin chart here. I'm not going to use futures because that skews the data a little bit, but let's go to the Bitcoin price chart. Down 3.51% today. Personally, I don't call this a head and shoulders pattern. I know that many of you will look at that and say, well, it kind of looks like it, right? It's just loosely. I'll draw it on here for anybody who might not know what a head and shoulders formation is. Let's go to draw lock. Here it would be your left shoulder. Here is the head. And then you could argue that this is your right shoulder. And then now we're going to see it come back down there. And then ultimately it could drop and see a big decline. Well, if we do look at that from a pure measurement perspective, it would actually be along the lines of this. 1 second here. Because you have to use the neckline as part of your argument being made for the head and shoulders. So there is your neckline. So now I will measure down here, figure out exactly where the forecasted move may be if we do break it, and that would put Bitcoin down somewhere around that 23,000. I personally don't think we'll get below 24.4. I think you're going to stop right over here at this I'll put a Tom bar on the screen for us real quick. There's the Tom bar. I personally think that this lower yellow box would be a pretty significant slide and most likely your normal stopping point. No head and shoulder. Looks like a yellow box to me. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really have a consistent high to it, Tom. That's why I wouldn't call it that. It's just kind of chopping. And, you could, through an abstract eyes, you could make the argument that is somewhat of a head and shoulders, albeit a very wide one. However, I'm not going to trade it as a head and shoulders. I'm simply going to trade it as, if it breaks these demand zones I've got drawn on my screen here, then I'm shooting for that as my target. So I'm going to get rid of the head and shoulders because personally, John, I don't think that is a head and shoulders pattern. But if you want to trade it that way, that's absolutely fine. It's just kind of a loose head and shoulders. It almost looks like a channel or trend, slight uptrend going forward. All right, so I got my 2 Bitcoin questions out of the way. What do I have coming through the chat? So Ticketmaster will be the next crypto exchange. They know something about fees, I hear. Oh, man, they're the worst. Please don't reference them as Ticketmaster. It gives them an air of intelligence and greatness. They're Ticket Bastard is what the name of that company should be. Growing pains and the evolution of Bitcoin. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right, Big Eb. And it's unfortunate that it's coming now. I want you guys to watch the video that I make for barchart.com because I'm putting a lot of time and effort into it. But when you look at the obstacles and the pros and cons and the good and the bad of what's facing Bitcoin right now, Bitcoin to me is poised for a nice big run here. And this type of thing bogs it down, right? It puts a negative cloud over Bitcoin because what you're going to hear now in the media is Bitcoin is slow. Bitcoin's not used. It no longer has utility because it's just bogged down. And right now I got 460,000 unconfirmed transactions. That's a monster amount of data that's just sitting out there waiting to go through the pipeline. What that might do is drive people to other networks. And where are they going to go? Ethereum? Remember, Ethereum had the same problem, year or two years ago, when NFTs really started popping. Ethereum was completely bogged down. I mean, we were talking $20,000 fees to make a $100 transaction on Ethereum. It was nuts. We did that in my CIL class, tried to buy $100 worth of Decentraland token playing in Decentraland, and it was a $19,000 fee. It was crazy. So, but those fees have gone down substantially. The benefit for Ethereum here is they're now proof of stake and can much more easily adjust their fee structure and do in scalability measures, whereas Bitcoin can't really do that. For one, if you believe that Bitcoin should have a much bigger block size, right now it's 1 megabyte, you're like, oh, well, it should be bigger. Then just trade with Bitcoin Cash, right? Bitcoin Cash stole Bitcoin's code, made it 8 times bigger block size, and called it a day. But it's run by a bunch of scammy, slimy venture capitalists, one named Roger Ver. Just shady guy trying to make himself rich off the deal. But that's Bitcoin, the bigger block size. Use that. Leave Bitcoin alone. Let me see. Is it because people are trying to ask Bitcoin to act like ETH to use? I thought ETH was made. Yep, you're right, Blue Diesel. That's really what Ethereum was designed to be, right? It was designed to be a programmable blockchain for smart contracts, NFTs, DEXs, and that's really what caused the huge popularity in Ethereum. And that's one of the reasons I loaded up on Ethereum and have it as my number 2 holding. But Bitcoin was you kind of just segregate them. You say, okay, I have one that's just for a store of value and money, right? It wasn't really a programmable blockchain. But now all of a sudden, they're trying to make it out to be something more than it is. And I think that could ultimately hurt Bitcoin. I'm really not a fan of all these ordinals and inscriptions and Pepe tokens that, are an embarrassment to anybody who buys those things. If you buy them, shame on you. Stay away from any meme coin. You're demeaning yourself, and you're also ruining. You're hurting the image of the integrity of cryptocurrency and digital assets. All right, let me get to gold here in just a second. Make sure I go in through all my questions. Yeah, so I tried to make the image with Bitcoin where people were just piled up and just surrounding Bitcoin, and this is the image that I got. Not the best one in the world. Okay. Let's move on from there. I'm going to run through our top 7 markets here. Start from the bottom, work our way to the top. Bitcoin, obviously the worst performer out there. It's not down 8% today. This is because it's the futures market. The futures market was closed on Saturday and most of Sunday, whereas if we look at the spot, it's had 3 down days in a row. So when you're looking at Bitcoin, you really shouldn't look at the Bitcoin futures because it skews the data and makes it look very awkward. That said, Bitcoin was your worst performer on the day. Right now, it's down about 3.2% for the day. I can go down here and show you. Yeah, here's BTC, and you can see 3 just Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, 3 big down days in a row, but the futures market swallows it up. So Bitcoin down 3.43% today, but yeah, still holding that level. And as again, I've mentioned this number right here, which is 26,666 is kind of the bottom area here where I start to get nervous on it. That's your worst performer. Russell 2000 had a phenomenal Friday. Today, not looking so good. Let me get my volume off of here. From the technical perspective, feels like it's still in that slow drift downtrend here. It was down only 0.25% today, so not that big of a deal for the Russell. The Dow was down 0.16%, but again, most of these markets really didn't do much today. It was rather quiet, and personally, I thought that was surprising. Yes, I know we have CPI and PPI numbers coming out Wednesday and Thursday, but kind of would have anticipated a little bit more action on this Monday, once they had a chance to digest all of Powell's comments and other central bank actions. S&P was your 4th place winner today, up 0.06%, but really just a spinning top formation after Friday's just gigantor move to the upside here, so nothing technically noteworthy there. Podium time, though. Here is the NASDAQ 100 futures. This one's probably the more important of the bunch because it just keeps pushing and pushing near this ceiling. Let's see if I can get the exact number here. I'm going to put a new line on right at the top in snap mode. So you can see this top red line is 13,370, and right now we're at 13,326, or 352, excuse me. So we're only 18 points away from the high that's achieved since August of 2022. So it's been a long time, and we've been slowly trucking forward, making higher highs, making higher lows. NASDAQ looking really good right now. My guess is you'll probably see it have a small bounce down before it breaks 13,370, and then all of a sudden rally up to that upper supply zone you can see in the yellow box between 13,630 and 13,760. Okay, we're almost at the top. Gold. Gold, $2,033 a day. We had a nice session last week. I didn't get a chance to talk about that, where gold had a nice surge over a couple days from about 1990 all the way up to 2080. Pretty big pop. I gave some back on Friday, and here we are with a nice little bounce today of 0.41%. But good news is it's over 2,000 and holding there. It's at 2033 right now. Looking very good. And I do think you'll end up seeing it challenge these highs that go back to March of 2022, which is right around 2078. And finally, crude oil with the big gain on the day. Nice knee-jerk reaction there as it shot up 2.55% for crude oil, 73.16. Now, I had this yellow box drawn, but that's not really a supply zone. I'm going to take that one off. I was using it as a demand zone on the fall down, but it knifed right through that, so we'll get rid of that bad boy. So now the question would be, where do you see it bouncing up to? Well, if I'm using supply and demand zones, then this would become my next logical target for crude oil, which would be between, call it 75.50 and 76.90. That'll be the next level there. So there was a question here: Does gold look like it will have a little pullback? Well, if I look at that GC, it still feels like there's a big uptrend intact, right? It's making higher highs, it's making higher lows. So if it does pull back here, Rob, your target's going to be 1990. It's just basically that spot that it's been kind of hovering on for the better part of 2 months now. So, judging by the way we saw Friday's action, I actually kind of felt like there would be a little bit more of a pullback today. Now, I was kind of targeting that 1990, but we didn't get it. If we start to see a little bit of market turmoil, then you'll see that risk-off movement come back in and gold start to move back to the upside. But right now, to me, it's a 50-50 toss. I'm more inclined to think it's going to move to the upside here, just because of the way it's stabilized today and had a nice little green day of 0.41%. Can't believe Buffett has 40% of his Class A equity in Apple. Yeah, isn't it funny? Because remember years ago he was saying that he was like Mr. Anti-Technology, wasn't going to get involved with Apple, and now he's just jumped on Apple late. A little bit risky for him to do that, but how do you bet against Apple? You really can't. We had the discussion last year when we had the chip issue in the supply chain that the iPhone 14 wasn't going to be making it in time, and they were going to lose potentially hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars worth of revenue because of that iPhone 14. That didn't come to fruition. It seemed like I didn't hear any really bad things about their supply chain disruption at all. And on that note, since Koja asked, let's go to AAPL. So similar to what we saw with gold, you've got a really nice uptrend going, higher highs, higher lows for Apple, which is one of the main reasons we're seeing the NASDAQ challenge its current high situation. But if we zoom out and go back to it, Koja, absolutely. He says, Merlin, is Apple at a big supply zone? Yeah. I'm going to move this back to here just so it's out of my way, and I will put it on from the high point to the base right in there. I mean, you are right in supply zone on Apple right now. I'm for one, I can't trade Apple anyway, but if I could trade Apple, I may actually be looking at shorting this bad boy. Right, shorting it because it's due for a pullback. It had that huge gap up last week, of course, earnings helping there, but you had this nice gap up. It gapped up right into overhead supply. Didn't have follow through today. My gut would tell me that you're going to have a pullback here on Apple over the next couple of days. If it does give confirmation of that, then hey, might have a good shorting opportunity. And remember, given how much Apple's weighting is in the S&P and in the NASDAQ, there may be some opportunities here as well for a pullback in one of these two indexes as well. What else do I have on there? I got them all. Did you go to the yellow bond? Perfect. All right, I think I got most of it covered. Let me real quickly run through some of the announcements that happened today. Earnings-wise, there were some decent names, but none of the juggernauts. Most of those are already done. All the big stuff's out of the way. But here is what happened today. You had PayPal report earnings, you had Western Digital, you had Skyworks, and you had CRISPR Therapeutics as some of the major ones. They've all reported earnings, and they all beat earnings, and almost all of them struggled. Look at the Skyworks, down 6%. They beat earnings. Western Digital beat earnings pretty handily. They were down as well. So kind of a mixed day for earnings, but that was the two major announcements that happened from the earnings front. Economic calendar-wise, not a lot going on. Oops. Okay, cool. I'm jumping the gun here. I guess my schedule wants me to do the earnings calendar for tomorrow. So we'll jump into earnings and economic calendar for tomorrow. For those of you in the cannabis space, I think Mike, you were the one that was always into MJ, I believe. We haven't looked at weed in a long time. Gosh, I tell you, this is just a horrific chart. And we talked about this. There was a period of time where I was actually bullish on it, and it was back in when it started to break the downtrend. And all of a sudden, you've been in an even bigger one. One of the interesting things about this is I have some friends in Northern California who are professional growers. God love Humboldt County, and they are pretty much ceasing operations. They're not growing anymore because the cost to them their costs have gotten higher because of inflation, but because the amount of people in grow rooms. I mean, you might not know this, but in your town, wherever you live, if you're in California or Colorado, there's most likely some gigantic warehouse grow rooms right around you, and you don't even know, right? You may not even know, but they'll have Costco-sized warehouses just full of weed growing, and it's legal. But because of those production facilities and the sheer amount of cannabis being grown right now, because it was the gold rush, now all of a sudden, these growers aren't getting the $4,000 a pound they would get. Now it's like, hey, $500 a pound. And all of a sudden, it's starting to get to a point where it just doesn't make any sense for people to grow. That's part of the growing pains of an industry. When the money is golden, it looks just amazing, everyone wants to do it. Now all of a sudden, everyone's in it. It's like, wait a minute, we've got all this excess supply. I mean, think about like the wine country. My father is in Sonoma, and he loves his wines. He was telling me years ago there were so many people coming to the Sonoma Valley and Napa Valley and opening up wineries, right? Just take any pasture you can find, throw some grapes on it, and you'll make a ton of money. It got to the point where there were so many grapes that they were just They were rotting on the vine because there wasn't the demand for the supply. So it always boils down to supply and demand in these markets. So I remember friends were going to the wineries and buying grapes just for pennies because the wineries like, well, we're going to let them rot anyway. So yeah, sure, just give us something for them. Fine. It's funny. Mamon says, oh, you'd smell it. No, you wouldn't. There's new technology out there that you could literally be in the room next to a grow chamber. You could be in the bedroom next to you, and with the right filtration, and they have different filter systems, you wouldn't smell it in that room next door. Kind of crazy. All right. Anyway, that's where we are with the cannabis industry. I still love the industry from a medicinal perspective. I think it does wonders. And honestly, if I can get rid of big pharma and all their BS and keeping people sick through medication, I'd much rather go with holistic medicines that may actually heal people in the process. And I think that there's some merits to cannabis for that. But as far as an investment, I would probably just stay away from MJ. And some of you are going to ask me, well, what could happen, right? What could happen to MJ? Could it rally up here? Yeah, it could. But what will probably happen is it is now in risk of being delisted because it's under a certain price threshold. So you can, buy it thinking, oh, it's going to only as low as it can go, it'd be zero. Well, what they'll do is do a 10-for-1 reverse split, and instead of being $3.53, it'll be $35.30. And it looks like a big stock again. So that, my guess, is what they're going to do here soon. They will probably do a reverse split on MJ just to keep it regulatory compliant and keep it listed. But, if you're looking to go long cannabis, I would say you don't buy it until it starts to make some new highs. Obviously the action over the last 2 weeks has been phenomenal. It's gone from $3 to $3.50. Great. Where is that line in the sand? I'm curious for anybody watching right now. If you look at this long-term chart here, obviously the ETF for the cannabis industry, the main one is MJ, right? That's the big ETF out there. It hit a high of $45 back in 2018 and has never looked back, right? We had one nice rally here in 2021, which I was like, all right, it broke some highs, right? I'm feeling bullish. And it was good, and then gave it all back. What would be your level, right? For anybody who would be looking at this chart right here, what's your level where you say, you know what? Okay, now I'm finally going to buy it. I know we're going to have some bottom feeders here who are going to look at it and go, I'm buying right now. I know this is it. This is the bottom. Okay, well, that's risky. It could keep on going to zero. But I'm curious where you guys think might be the level. I'll draw some lines on it to make it easy for you. We're currently the most recent high is about 359. There's I'm gonna mark some major turning points here. That's one right around 480. Just kind of marking off big numbers. I will say, if I look at these red lines I drew on here, if MJ has another little pullback, right? And what I'm expecting from MJ would be a pullback. I'm expecting something like this. If it gets back down into there, then, there's nothing for me to do. It's still, from my mind, keeping its downtrend going. But if it were to rally back up and now start to break through, let's call it this 360 mark, then I may think about buying in some. Big Eb says 250. So Big Eb's still saying catch the falling knife. It's got to go down even more. It's got to go to prices it has never seen for Big Eb to get involved with this one. I'm for one, I'm okay leaving money on the table. I just want to make sure it's moving back up, right? I don't really care about picking the bottom. So I'm going to let this thing start to make some new highs. If it does, I may throw a couple bucks at MJ. Maybe buy some leaps if there's liquidity on them. I haven't checked, but otherwise, I'm leaving it alone. I need for it to make a new high before I would even consider it. Even though I'm bullish on the industry, just too much competition. Doesn't look good. There we go. Let's see. Cannabis is too bulky compared to fentanyl and heroin for the cartels. Sad but true. And the cost to manufacture fentanyl, it's so much easier. You just go one pharma lab and you can print pills all the day long or whatever it is, crystals. Cannabis takes some space. I saw a comment here earlier. RG says 200,000 square foot building in downtown LA. RG, there's dozens of 200,000 square foot grow rooms in downtown LA. LA has quite a few big grow chambers. I know a friend of mine is actually a fairly large grower running some of those rooms, and they're massive, and you don't even know. You work right next door to them and not know because they can filter everything out with these new chemicals and charcoal filters and all that type of stuff. Anyway, I'll leave it alone. So we went through the earnings, and I thought I had the economic calendar on here. I guess for some reason I was silly and didn't. Oh, I didn't unhide it. One thing about your PowerPoints, make sure you unhide slides that you want people to see. So let me go here and unhide this one so we can see this earnings announcement and economic calendar for you guys for tomorrow. And there's your economic calendar for tomorrow. You can see really not too much. You've got a couple FOMC members speaking. You got Jefferson and Williams. There was, I forgot his name, but there was a gentleman who spoke today from the FOMC, and he was saying, look, I think we got problems ahead. I see recession ahead, and banking sector issues. Like, oh, great, more FOMC people, FOMC members thinking that there's still some pain to come here. So who knows exactly where we're headed? All I can tell you is that you've got 2 members speaking tomorrow. Plus, you have the tip IBD economic optimism numbers, and that's pretty much it. Not a lot of really important stuff happening on the economic announcement front for tomorrow. Now, there was stuff going on. I'm going to bring up just the last 2 little things here, and then we'll wrap up, which is that dollar index. That dollar index, keep your eye on this one. It's hugging the very, very bottom of that head and shoulders pattern, which is not a perfect head and shoulders, I know, but it's a little bit clearer than what we saw with Bitcoin's price chart. Its inability to make new highs, matter of fact, it's barely able to get its feet back on the ground, really kind of clues me into the fact that this is probably going to start to drop here. And if it does follow through with the rate of the head and shoulders pattern, you're looking at a slide of about 12% on that dollar index, which would actually cause a huge move up in the equity market. So just something to think about there, and wait and see what happens with this dollar. But that could be one of those shoes that drop that could create a lot of opportunities. And lastly, we've got the yield for the 10-year, but really not a lot going on there with the 10-year. So that should do it. Oh, yeah, I guess we had some life breathed back into natural gas today. It was up 4.7%, but still seems to be just kind of dead in the water for right now. I know some of you guys are trading natural gas and oil still. Oh, there you go. All right, that's going to do it for me tomorrow. But then you got Yellen saying the economy is good. She says the economy is good, but she also is saying that if we don't do something with this debt ceiling, we have a real crisis on our hands, right? For your bar chart article number 5, review your trading plan. So maybe you should review Apple and Pharma. They are all just tickers, right? Okay, good point. So point number 5 in my article that I wrote for bar chart, which I love the feedback. So if you guys have feedback, if you have feedback on my articles, definitely give it to me. I don't position myself as a writer. I don't believe I'm a good writer at all. Thank you to my editor. Katie's my editor. But if you have comments and feedback, email me at TraderMerlin@gmail.com. Also, if you have thoughts for upcoming articles, because I can talk about all kinds of different topics as you guys have experienced. I just don't really write very well. So anyway, for those who may not know me, let me get how much time I got? This is Tom Barr's attempt to make this a 1-hour show. I was making it a half-hour show, but because Tom, I have it written in my trading plan that I can't trade Apple and I can't trade biotechs or pharmaceuticals. Just remove those from the pool, make it easier on myself. And Tom is right. He says, well, your rule number 5, which says review your trading plan. So review your trading plan is designed to say, look at all your rules. Are there things that you could modify with those rules that might make your trading better and maybe eliminate some of the problems that you have in your trading? I put Apple on my list because when I did the analysis of my trading plan, what I would do is I would go back through in the monthly statements and I would say, okay, over the course of this month, which stocks have cost me the most money? Which ones have made me the most money? And I never knew what was making me the most money in my trading or costing me the most money until I actually did the analysis. So what I did is I found that Apple was one of my biggest losers, yet I continually traded it. So I realized I had 3 choices. I could continue trading Apple and keep losing money. That's just insanity, right? Stupid. I could really take a deep dive and go through all of the things that I know and really figure out why that was happening with Apple and how could I make that a profitable trade for me. That would have taken a lot of time and effort and energy to fix this small problem with one ticker symbol. Or option number 3 was just kick it to the curb, remove it, get it out of your life and just don't deal with it, right? This is how I deal with a lot of people in my life. If I have people who I realize might have major character flaws and bring my life down in some way, I can sit with them and converse and say, hey, you need to change your ways because of this, that, and the other thing, or get the hell out of my life. Beat it. I don't need you in my life anymore. You can fix whatever you got to fix, but I got other things I got to do. So to Big Ev's point, or to Tom's point, I could go back and I could probably be trading Apple again. I could probably go after biotechs and pharmaceuticals because they are just ticker symbols. However, I've got thousands and thousands and thousands of other things that I could look at. So really don't feel like I need to go back and add Apple to my list of tradable securities. I actually like having it as this blacklisted one because it's the most popular security in all the financial markets. And it's the one of the two that I cannot trade. The two ticker symbols I cannot trade. Cisco being the other one. So you're right. I could go back through and reevaluate, but I do that from the perspective of when you go back and review, it's about introspection, saying where are my strengths, where are my weaknesses, where am I making the money, where am I losing it, what are all the factors that are causing me success, and more importantly, what are all the factors that are causing me loss. And as you progress, you will find there'll be new things that are coming in and causing you to lose. Maybe all of a sudden you started listening to Jim Cramer and you were getting killed, or you just started following some 14-year-old kid on a Wall Street Bets chat room that lives in his parents' garage and has got 50 million followers, and you're taking his advice and you're losing money. Okay, well, remove that. Get rid of that garbage. When did you stop trading Apple? They have had many. Oh, yeah. And Tom, I'm willing to bet you that I could trade successfully Apple today. I'm pretty sure. I go with a 99% probability I could probably do okay with Apple today, but I'll just leave it alone. Oh, you mean at my house, Blue Diesel? Get used to it. They're building a 2-story home 5 feet from my studio window right now. You're going to hear jackhammers and hacksaws and compressors. It's an absolute nightmare. So I apologize, but you'll always hear construction in the background on this show for probably the next year. It's just a nightmare. Big Ed says, I should put NVIDIA on the no trade bucket, but I like the rush. And that's your trade-off, Big Ed. I would argue, screw the rush. Find the rush in something else. But if it's something that's bitten you over and over and over again, get rid of it. Get rid of NVIDIA, even though you love watching it. Same thing for me with Apple. Just move on. All right, that's going to do it for me for today, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. If you have any comments, questions, feedback, email me at TraderMerlin@gmail.com. You can scroll back up and find the link to the barchart.com article that I wrote. I will put it in the chat again, so if you want to read this one or share it with some of your friends and whatever, I think that helps me out from the reading perspective and acceptance over there at barchart.com. And I'm hoping, again, probably tomorrow night I'll have my video for Bitcoin done, and then I'll let you guys know all about that one. Tomorrow I don't have any particular show topic. If there's something that you want to hear, email me at TraderMerlin@gmail.com or put them down below any of the YouTube videos. I'll go check all that stuff tonight and incorporate it into tomorrow's show. Thank you guys so much. Have a fantastic trading day tomorrow. I'll see you then.